All right. If we waited for every siren to be done,
Yeah,
we'd
we'd
never
never do
get
it.
started. So here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to Her Rules Radio. I'm here with Danielle Stroble, creator of Keller Street Co-work. Now, Danielle, you went from a hyper competitive, hyper male dominated industry to a super community, like super like I just think co-working cozy.
Yes,
You
I did.
You went from one extreme to the other.
Completely, which seems to be the story of my life.
Really?
Quite honestly. Yeah, I worked in IndyCar racing for 20 years. I was one of less than a handful of women. Most of the other women were in public relations. I worked on the manufacturer side, so I was kind of in the grind with all the technology, which was exciting.
Were you on the pit crew? Were you like
I
changing
was-
tires in 5 seconds?
I was not. Those tires are really heavy. No, I wasn't. It's interesting. I just kind of fell into the industry because I knew people, and I was an accountant actually. So, and then I worked my way up into the industry, and I ended up as the managing director of a couple of manufacturing importers, which was great. But definitely hyper focused on competition. There was no community on the emotional side. Let's put it that way. We were like a traveling circus. So we traveled all over the world, and there was a number, hundreds of us, but we just went from city to city. But there was no connectivity between us.
Wow.
It was very, I didn't realize that at the time, but
Yeah.
it was very isolating.
Well, there's a kind of camaraderie that comes with intense working situations where you're like battle brothers.
Exactly.
Right? High intensity, high adrenaline. You're dealing with very stressful situations. So you definitely bond in a certain way.
For sure.
But it's not, it's interesting. I've read several books about how Navy SEALs train.
Oh, yeah.
And now they might be a little bit different because they truly have each other's lives
Right.
in their hands. But there's, they talk about, the grim style of humor that they develop with each other over time.
I mean, it's not unlike that, really, when you think about the fact that the guys who are putting these cars together, and even the manufacturers who are supplying the cars, like, we're putting people's lives, in the car every day. And I've been in many situations in which friends and comrades have died because of one reason or another in car racing. So it's a little bit like that. You're definitely thrown into the deep end, but honestly, it's hard. It's the traveling life is hard. I kind of relate it mostly like the entertainment industry as well. It's sponsor driven. So when money is that big of a focus, the stakes are different, and there's nobody who's out for you. There's nobody who's interested in lifting you up and, empowering you to do good. It's all, every man for himself, literally.
Yeah. So why did you retire?
That's a great question. I got married and I started having kids, which, kind of started the idea of like, I don't want to be on the road anymore. But also, as I disconnected from the travel life and I relocated to a more corporate side of the business, I disconnected from from the people in it. And I just started learning more and more about myself. And what I realized is I lived an entire life of male dominated work and isolation in terms of who I was as a human. I never made a conscious decision to do any of the work I did. I don't regret any of it, but all I did was walk through doors that opened. I never said, what do I want to do? How do I want to feel? How do I want to make an impact? All I knew was that somewhere inside I felt like I was meant to do something bigger, and I just didn't really know what that was.
So when you finally had a little space, because you had to like stay in one place, those questions started to come up.
Yes. Also, I was in a marriage that was very unhealthy, and I realized I just finally got to a point where I was so desperate to figure out who I was. I had no identity. I walked away from all of it. I walked away from racing. I walked away from my marriage. only to realize like, holy crap, now I'm at the bottom. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with my life. So I went into survival mode basically. And it was just like, how am I going to pay the bills? I knew what I was good at. I was good at teaching people how to build businesses because I had done it on so many occasions. So I just started doing that work. I was finding people that I wanted to surround myself with, which really kind of tended to be more creative style. You know, it was the opposite of everything I'd ever done. But I knew the one common thread was that I knew how to build a business. Yeah. So I just was like, oh, I like you. You're creative. I'm going to hang out with you. And one thing led to another.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Do you consider yourself to be creative?
I do. Only just now, though, like in the last few years. Fortunately, there were two really great things that came out of that really difficult marriage. One was a child, and one was the revelation that I have this huge creative side.
Samesies.
I know.
I got that out of my first marriage too.
I mean, that was he was the one. He's a creative director. He's an artist, and he kept telling me, "You are so creative. You should do something with that." And so I did.
There you go. How old's your kid?
5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Itty bitty.
I know. He's a little guy. He's adorable. He tells me he loves me all the time. And I love
the best. My kid's 13 and he still says it like maybe twice a day and I'll take it.
Oh, yes.
That's
as long
good.
as you can take it.
Yes, absolutely. I still smother him with kisses. Love you, sweetie.
Oh, what's his name?
Lakin.
Lakin.
Yeah.
Oh, I love boys. Little boys.
I know. They're so cute. They're so fun. Let's talk about this realization that it's interesting to me that like you're describing kind of a dire moment here, and you realize I can get myself through this by helping other people. Like I do have a set of skills,
right,
that it's going to help people, but it wasn't a corporate gig, so it didn't have security.
Right, which scared the shit out of me.
Super scary.
Yeah.
Why do we do this? I did the same thing. Like I'm going to start an entrepreneurial venture in the midst of everything like falling apart.
I think because there's a set, everybody talks about hitting rock bottom, or some version of bottom before they realize that they have to do something differently. And there's something to be said for that. When you're in like, oh crap, I don't have anything left and I'm desperate to make something work, I may as well do something that I want to do. I'm fortunate that I had a friend who exposed me to the idea that I could actually make a decision on my own and choose to feel a certain way and follow that and be like, I was early 40s and I was like, oh, you mean I have a choice in how I feel? Oh, okay, great. Let me see what that's like.
Had anyone ever asked you?
Never.
How do you want to feel?
Never.
And then let's talk about the ways that you can feel that way.
Yep. And it's small. It's like I basically determined how I want to feel. I did a lot of work around that. And I made every decision in a day around that. So a small decision as to like, do I want another cup of coffee? Or do I want to go to the coffee shop down the street?
So what did you do to figure out how you wanted to feel? Was it a book?
I went to a workshop and there's an author, her name is Danielle.
Yeah.
And she wrote the book,
figured.
The Desire Map.
I figured. Okay,
so a friend of mine who is a coach's coach, basically, she was asked to do a beta test of the Desire Map workshop.
Yeah.
So she invited me. She's like, I have an extra ticket. I was 6 months postpartum and never been away from my son, still nursing.
Yeah.
And my head was spinning on like, how do I get out of this life I'm in? And so I went. I didn't even know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And I walked away changed.
That's awesome. I love those books that just change your life.
I know.
Aren't
I
they
know.
great?
Yes.
The Artist's Way is my current
Oh,
one.
yes. That's a great one.
It's so funny. I owned it like 3 times. But just a few months ago, it came back into my hands. And I'm like, oh, I should do this now.
Yep.
And like now it makes sense.
It's interesting. Your life takes like twists and turns, right? And you can be confronted with something multiple times and you don't even notice it until the moment you're ready for it.
Yes. That's so true. Okay. So you hit bottom. You went through the shit. And then you're like, okay, I can help people start their businesses and grow businesses. I can do this. How did you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to open a co-working company?
It's funny. A little bit of putting it out into the universe. About 8 years ago, I was in this old slaughterhouse in Madrid, Spain. And I was helping launch a different business. And I just was sitting in a cafe and watching all of these people like kind of enter in and out of the space. And I was thinking how great it felt to be just around other bodies that seemed to be doing creative things. So that was about 8 years ago. Fast forward to about 3 years ago when one of the clients that I was helping build a business was a branding agency. And the founder was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I took over the whole branding agency while she was recovering.
Oh my gosh.
And through that, we were branding a restaurant, excuse me, and the investors in that restaurant had a building downtown Petaluma, which is about 40 minutes north of San Francisco. And I had looked at this building like 6 months earlier and thought, oh my gosh, that space that I dreamed of 7 years ago, or I guess at the time it was like 5 years ago, this would be a great place for that. But there was no way I could afford it. So I met the investors at the restaurant I was branding. They owned the building. They tried to sell it for 2 years and they're like, we don't know what to do with it. I'm like, let me tell you, I've got a great idea. So I was consulting with them. I pitched the co-working idea. And I was just in a consultant capacity. And halfway through the project, they're like, this needs to be yours. Like, this just needs to be yours.
This is your co-working company, not just a co-working company.
Yeah. So I was there from start and then I launched it and I've grown it. What's interesting is in the beginning, it was just about the space and it's beautifully designed. And I worked with a number of amazing artisans that are local and that was very important. And as the community has grown, so has my realization that community and connection is absolutely everything. And when I thought, as I was building, I'm like, someday I'm going to scale and maybe I'll do 5 of these. And now I've realized, like, I'm not sure if I even want to do that because this community means so much to me that they're my people. They're like my family.
Yeah.
And they feel the same way about myself and about each other.
Yeah.
So...
Well, tell me about your decision. Why was it so important to bring in local artisans to make the space a place?
There's a few reasons. First of all, Petaluma, California is full of amazing creative people. A lot of people have come up from San Francisco as they start to grow their families. And they're also a community that is hyper focused on making sure that their people are the people doing things. So when outside companies come in, they're very skeptical. They want to know that you're there to help make their community bigger and better. Not necessarily bigger, but definitely better. So I had access to a lot of creative people and it was important to keep it as local as possible, especially because the investors were not local. So it was important for me to balance, not taking necessarily the credit for the financial side of it, right? But at the same time, not making the people of Petaluma feel like there was an outsider coming in trying to take over.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the, what do you call it, 800-pound gorilla in the room? Let's talk about WeWork.
Yes.
For a second.
Oh, thank you.
Because I have my own opinions about WeWork.
Probably not different than mine.
Okay. It's very disappointing to see what has happened with that company.
Yeah.
Especially in the last 6 months have been a disaster.
Sure.
And it's certainly given co-working, I think, a terrible name.
It has.
Which is so, it's not the truth about the entire industry.
Exactly.
So what are you thinking here?
Well, it's funny that you say this. One of the things I do at Keller Street Cowork is I run a mastermind group for the members. And I was masterminding around my podcast and this trip out here. And one of the things that came up was that I really need to take the narrative back from this WeWork conversation. Generally speaking, I think in the beginning, WeWork had this idea that building a beautiful space and creating a community around work was the thing to do. And it was the right idea. They quickly moved away from that. I mean, WeWork is not co-working. WeWork is real estate. And
yes.
It's not only real estate, it's corporate real estate. And it's definitely not what we're doing. They don't care about their community. I've
you
heard.
Can feel it when you walk in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they don't even give you access to the place, really. So, I want to be careful not to say, they definitely paved a way. They've blazed a trail, which I'm grateful for, because when I speak to people and I tell them what I do, now they know that it's a thing.
Right.
Even if I have to kind of explain the difference,
Yeah.
at least now I have their attention. We're not that. We're more about the community than we are about the real estate, for sure.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, as we were talking about the dark night of the soul that you went through, a question that I always come back to is, how do driven, creative women learn to and commit to taking care of themselves?
Oh gosh. Seriously, this is not my strong suit, but I'm diving into it hard right now.
So what are the challenges around that for you?
For me specifically, my business and my children take up all of my time.
Yeah.
I mean, quite literally. I have two children who go to two different schools, who have two different fathers. So logistically, that's just a shit show. Plus, I have the business, which is a 24-hour access business. And I'm quite honestly, I'm beat at the end of the day. I just had a conversation with one of the other attendees here about the fact that I don't wash my face before I go to bed, and everybody's horrified by it.
Well, your skin looks great, so it's a new skin hack. Don't wash.
Don't wash. But I know I need to take care of myself because I am getting older. I'm getting more tired. I feel the difference when I don't get out and breathe fresh air and get exercise. Quite honestly, what's new for me, even more than just physically taking care of myself, is taking care of myself emotionally. I've always been the person who takes care of everybody else. And now, especially because I have a community of 100 people who I have to take care of all day, every day.
Super mama.
Yeah. So I'm trying to be more intentional, and now I'm diving into like trying to get into meditation and of course, because I want all of the opportunities, I'm trying to manifest that shit daily.
Right. I know.
So it's a learning process for me, and it's one that I have to really be intentional to try and dive into every day.
So what are you starting to notice in terms of your physical energy and vitality and your ability to do all this work?
I've noticed that I have way more that I can tap into. I have also noticed, this is interesting with this kind of getting into the meditation and the manifesting and all of that. When you become aware of your physical being and your emotional being, everything feels like it's sparklier and like you can't not see it. You know what I mean? So when I'm becoming hyper aware of when I need to stop and take a glass of water, or when I need to just take a breath or walk around the block. I probably needed to do that for the 47 years before. I just wasn't hearing it.
Yeah.
So once you know it, you can't unknow it.
Right. Once you start listening.
Yeah.
Can't shut that up.
Yep. It's true. It's really true. So,
you can
and
try,
also,
but it goes badly.
Also, I just have to say, like, when you start to surround, I'm not the kind of men versus women type of conversationalist. Me too.
Awesome.
I love making out with them too, just, on a side note. But I do know that when I surround myself with women they just get me because they are me, right?
Yeah.
And so you can have these types of conversations and you're like, oh, really? That's happening for me too. And you just become more aware that you're not lonely and isolated. And
I have a couple women in my coaching programs who are in their 60s, and they're so enlivened by the kinds of conversations that they are having with the women who are younger than them. They're like, women my age don't talk about stuff like this. And it's like a huge breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
So it really is so important for us to be able to share our full selves.
I agree. I agree.
It is. It's self-care.
It is. A sense of self-care is like when you can share what's going on with you, you feel bigger. You feel, it does feel like it's taking care of yourself too.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what is one thing that you suspect you could be doing differently that would be a real step up in your self-care?
I quite honestly, I could use a little more physical movement. I mean, I think that I'm noticing that when I'm not active, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like running 5 miles or lifting weights or whatever, Orange Theory or any of that. It could be just taking a walk for 20 or 30 minutes. I sleep better.
Yeah.
All like the voices in my head get quieter.
Yeah.
And I don't prioritize that like I should. So I think that probably should be something that I look into.
I'm going to send you this great graphic that outlines the daily habits of like Einstein and Edison and like how these great thinkers and doers throughout human history spent their days.
Oh, please.
And almost all of them took a nap. Almost all of them like took walks in nature or like played violin or what, like the amount of time that they actually worked was like one of the smallest portions of their day.
Yeah. It's funny. I just read something recently about nature walks, and like it does make a difference. Like just also something, here's a little like life hack for you. Which maybe you already know. I'm a little late to the game here. Looking up above your horizon. So like literally pulling your head up and looking at something that's a little bit higher, and it even allows you to breathe in a little bit deeper. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's an entire world that's above my eyeballs.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
There's in positive psychology, there's a lot of conversation around this, and it's why my son, who's now 13, and I teach him like you have to hold your phone up to your eye level, not hunch over, because it changes our mood. When we look up,
for sure,
we're more hopeful and looking for answers. When we're crunched over, I mean, you can see it and feel it. When you're hunched over, you feel depressed and contracted.
Yeah.
It's actually, I am a huge bird nerd. I love Birdwalk. I'm an Audubon Club member. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because I feel so expansive and so hopeful.
Oh, that makes total sense.
New York City is one of the best places in America to
really
birdwatch. I talk about that on my show.
Shut up.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay. I think I need to move here. Okay. Or at the very least come visit once a month, like for a week. It could be bi-coastal.
I'll take you on some bird walks.
I can't wait. I totally can't wait.
Okay. So on Her Rules Radio, this is where we come to learn how to live life by our own rules. What is a rule that you see people living by that you think we need to rewrite or get rid of completely? Like a should people are living by, or just a rule that we're not even questioning?
I will go back because I'm becoming an expert in workspace design. I will say people who are going to look for a new job, for example, or a new line of work, 100% should prioritize and find out the space that they're going to be working in and demand something better. And if honestly, go as far as to potentially question whether that's the right job for you if you're not working in a space that's going to allow you some productivity, some socialization, some collaboration. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, because some people do not work well in open floor plans.
No, not at all.
It drives them insane and they can't work well.
Right.
And other people are like, put me in the mix. Throw me in the puppy pile.
Totally.
I want to be with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be very important. I mean, you spend so many hours of your week working, and I would even say reevaluate the concept of working from home. Everybody thinks that working from home is amazing, and for some people it is. It's also very isolating.
Yes.
And it's very you end up becoming very narrow in your line of thinking when you're doing your work. So new ideas are not coming quite as often, and you become stuck.
Yep.
For sure. And you do too much freaking laundry.
Oh my God. I was just going to say that. My dishes have never been so clean as when I work from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most co-working spaces, especially community focused ones, do day passes. You don't have to do the big membership. You can do day passes once a week, or you can do punch cards in some places. Like just get out and change your elevation and change your view. And
you know, a year ago, I'm professionalizing my art. I'm a painter also. And I decided to join a kind of a co-working studio space. So it's a big shared studio space. And it is so inspiring. Yeah. Like I'm not painting in my home by myself anymore. I get to see what other people are doing and talk about what they're creating. Right. And I didn't go to art school, so I don't have that
Oh, yeah.
language or the critique that people usually do. It has really expanded
There's also
things.
a misinterpretation of the way things work in an open space or a space with a lot of people. People assume like, oh, everybody's going to talk to me and I have to talk back. It's not true. It's not true. You will, like, almost through osmosis, pick up as much of that energy and as much as the new language and all of that just by being in the space.
Yeah.
For sure. And you
Yeah.
don't have to be social, but you probably will be because it's awesome.
I love that you're bringing in the language of energetics and connection to, what is it, a deeply, profoundly personal and shared experience of work.
Yeah. That also started with design for me. Like I'm fortunate to be in a building where we have an entire wall of windows that's like sunlit. So people walk in and the first thing they say is, oh, it feels so good in here. And that translates.
Right.
And so, yes, I definitely believe like the movement of the energy and just the energy of the people. What happens is the people who don't really have that or share that with you, they weed themselves out. It doesn't, there's no conflict there.
Yeah, it's like dating.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I had that one figured out.
So finally, you also have a podcast.
I do.
It's called I'm Not Gonna Lie.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
I'm Not Gonna Lie is the happiest hour, if not 2 hours, of my life every single week. It literally is what brings me the most joy besides my children, which actually maybe more so than my children right now. It's very conversational and very casual. It is an opportunity for me to sit with people that I have met but I don't know, or that I know really, really well. We usually have a glass of wine or a shot of tequila or maybe just a glass of water, and we connect and we have conversations, and nothing's off the table unless you want it to be off the table. But most importantly for me is for me to connect with somebody and to be able to amplify whatever it is that they want to talk about, or what their business is, or what their passion project is, or I'm very much a connector.
Yeah.
And so it's my joy to be able to connect with people and connect them with each other.
Yeah, that is one of the things I love about having a show.
Yeah.
It's like, I think you're amazing. Let's tell everybody about this amazing stuff
Exactly.
you're doing.
Like everybody needs to know,
Right.
right? For sure. I think that's a new way of thinking. And it's, you're going to be better as you make other people better. Anyway, there's way, way too much to go around for people to like operate in this space of like lack.
Yeah, it's true. Rising tides lifts all boats.
Yes.
Kids. Danielle Stroble, thank you so much for being here. Everybody go check out colorstreetcowork.com. I'm going to have to come to Petaluma and get a day pass.
You have a spot waiting for you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.